Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Cathedral check-in. My name is Mark McDonald, and I'm joined today with Dean Ansley Tucker. We're here to discuss a little bit about the survey that many of you filled out last week about where you stand with the reopening of the Cathedral. So why don't we just dive right in? Ansley, what was what was the idea behind this survey?
Well, we just wanted to get a read on how people are feeling about returning to worship, being indoors in numbers. We know that there's been quite a lot of controversy in the news, and also Dr. Bonnie Henry has been saying for some time now that she's moving towards allowing some easing of restrictions when it comes to faith gatherings. And so we just wanted to know how people were feeling.
So we got a total of 225 responses.
Yeah, 25.
And tell me a little bit about what the demographics of those responses look like.
Well, not surprisingly, the majority of those responding would fall into the seniors category, age 65 and over. So first of all, I want to say 225 is just pretty good when you only send out 350 emails. So I'm really grateful to people for just taking that moment to weigh in. So of the 225, almost exactly half were actually 75 or older, and a much smaller percentage were under, say, 65. So we didn't ask if people were male, female, married, or anything like that. We just wanted, what we really wanted to get a read on was when people might be expecting to be vaccinated. And then that would allow us to look at each cohort to see what their responses were specifically to the other determinants that we put in front of them.
So knowing that, each of the age groups had a slightly different distribution of their ranking of when they would want to come back to the cathedral. So tell us a little bit about that data and what you came up with.
Well, really, it was pretty consistent. One of the things we asked, first of all, about things over which we really have no control, which is whether people are immunized or whether there's herd immunity or whether the cathedral is open or not. That's not up to us to decide when we could begin to do that. But really, pretty well right across the board, with the exception of the 70 to 74 age group, people said that they would be most likely or most comfortable returning to the cathedral as soon as it's opened. So, of course, there's a level of trust there that we would have all public health policies in place. And the 70 to 74 group, their first choice was when they were immunized, and almost everybody else, with the exception of one of the younger cohorts, put immunization as their second comfort factor, that they need to feel that kind of personal protection before they come back to in-person worship.
So in general, we're seeing perhaps a level of trust in that when the cathedral is ready to open, people will actually feel that they want to come back. Is that sort of the impression that we're getting?
I think so, although I suspect another factor is that given that 50% of those responding will be eligible for vaccine probably before the cathedral is able to open, there may be some blending of views there, right?
For sure. So when we go into the real details and we started to ask people about their motivations or the things that they either missed or what they desired about the Sunday experience, there was a little bit more variety. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. We asked people to let us know which of a list of factors would be important for them. I think the question that we asked was, I am most likely to return to worship when, and then we had a number of factors that they could tick off, as many as applied. And so this is somewhat arbitrary. I can, let me actually show you a table.
Great.
Here we go. And I'm going to share my screen here. I hope people can see this. So you can see on the left the factors that were presented to people, that there would be the Eucharist, that they could receive from the chalice, that the congregation would be able to sing and not just listen, and so on. And then we assessed the data by age cohort, which was, of course, what we asked people in the first question. And where you see a check mark here, that means that 40% of the people in that, at least 40% of the people in that cohort, that column, 75 plus, 70 to 74, at least 40% said that, for instance, in the case of the Eucharist, that was important to them. They'd be most likely to return to worship when they could receive the Eucharist. So,
right. So this doesn't mean, for example, that when you don't see a check mark, it doesn't mean that no one had actually checked that off. It just means that like 40% of the people didn't check it off. So it's not like, it just makes it easier for us to look at the data. Is that right?
That's exactly right. That's why I say this is pretty arbitrary. Of course, there were people who said that they would like to receive from the chalice. It's just that in no case did 40% of the cohort say so. And the other thing this doesn't give you a sense of is where there were much larger than 40% groups wanting a particular factor taken into account. So for instance, well, let's go to the far right, the 25 to 39 cohort. 70% of that group said that they would like to be able to socialize before or after the service. It's fascinating to me that they didn't think that the coffee hour was the place that they were wanting to do that. So I don't know if that tells us something about Smith's Tavern being more fun than the coffee hour, or just what that means. But it's an interesting observation.
Where it seems that things were pretty consistent was in registration, right? And the need for registration. And I think we'd all totally get that, right?
Yes, it's a hassle, right? That you have to phone in, or you have to go onto the internet and register with Eventbrite, and then somebody might call you and tell you that we have a space now, even though Eventbrite told you that we were out of spaces for that particular Sunday. It's just an extra step, and yet we know that we have to limit, or at least this has been the case till now, we have to limit our numbers, and it's going to be a challenge to think if there is another option that would work. For example, I don't think people would enjoy lining up and only to find out that they're the 51st person in line and they now need to go home. So that's going to be a challenge for us. We have been thinking in our staff group about adding an 8 o'clock service in order to accommodate more than the 50 for Eucharistic worship. So we're working on it. If anybody has a bright idea, they should let us know.
So just to wrap up here, what are some of the gleanings here that we can take from all of this data that's come in? And again, thanking everyone for responding so quickly. It's been great to see so many responses.
Well, one thing we can see is that people who may have been Anglicans for much, much longer appreciate the Eucharist. It's interesting to me that the age group from 25 to 64 did not indicate that the Eucharist was as important to them. It's clear that there's a desire to be able to sing again. Anglicans they like to sing, they like their hymns. It's also clear that there's a comfort level around the wearing of masks and knowing that other people will be wearing masks. And I'm pleased to see that there's generally a desire to get back to in-person worship when we can.
So any final thoughts? I know we don't have a crystal ball here about the future, but any final thoughts about how this survey will help us to move back to our reopening?
Well, I think it gives us something to go on in terms of what kind of precautions people will be looking for when we say, Dr. Henry has said that we can gather inside again, and here are, let's say she were to say, and you don't need to wear masks anymore. I think we might say, and we would like you to wear a mask anyway, at least until whatever time. So we want to operate out of an abundance of caution because we are, as our demographics show here, generally speaking, a more vulnerable population. We need to take care of each other.
Ansley, thank you so much for delving into some of these numbers and making sense out of it. And again, thank you to everyone that responded to the survey. We're so grateful to have gotten this response, and it really will help us as we move forward. So to be continued. I think we have to just leave this as an open book right now. We don't know what will happen, and we just have to wait and see.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, and see you all at the next check-in.